In this chapter, we're going to learn to install SSL certificates using Let's Encrypt. If you visit the Let's Encrypt website, they recommend that you do that using something called CertBot. CertBot is a separate project from Let's Encrypt. It's developed by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF, and it's a client for Let's Encrypt that's written in the Python programming language using something called the ACME protocol. ACME stands for Automatic Certificate Management Environment. So you have three different groups that are all working together to make SSL certificates easier. Let's Encrypt provides free certificates. The group that developed the ACME protocol makes it easy to manage certificates. And then you have the EFF, which has created the CertBot client, which uses that ACME protocol to issue Let's Encrypt certificates. To see how it is easier, let's look at an overview of a traditional SSL certificate installation. We'll go into this more in depth in the next chapter. The first step is that you need to generate a public-private key pair. Then you need to use that public key to create something called a certificate signing request, or CSR. It basically is the public key plus some additional information. Then you'll visit a website for certificate authority, and you'll pick out the kind of certificate you want. That might be a single domain certificate or a wildcard certificate. You might choose domain validation or extended validation. Once you've selected your certificate, you'll submit your information and your CSR data. Then you'll wait for them to validate you. After that process is done, you'll actually receive a certificate. That certificate is a digital file that you would need to put on the web server, and then you need to edit the web server's configuration file to tell it where to find that digital certificate file. Now let's look at an overview of the process when using the ACME installation. You would log into your server, perhaps using a command line client or SSH to get to a remote server. You would download CertBot or another ACME client software, and then you run the software. And that's it. The software walks you through all the steps. It generates the public-private keys, it contacts Let's Encrypt and proves to them that you own the domain. Then it receives and restores the certificate file. It edits the web server configuration so that it knows where to find it. Their goal was to make obtaining certificates much easier, and it is. Now, it should be noted this is the best case scenario. It's important to understand all the steps that it performs because some setups you may need to perform some of those steps yourself. For example, if you use Apache or Nginx as a web server, then CertBot should edit the configuration file for you. But if you use other web servers, it may not. The CertBot process is continually improving their support for different servers and different configurations. In the next movie, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a CertBot installation. In this movie, I'm going to demonstrate how to install an SSL certificate using CertBot. So to begin with, let's go to the Let's Encrypt page, and you'll see that there's a big button here for Get Started. So somewhere on this page, it may change over time, but there should be something to say, let's get started. And it'll tell you here that CertBot is their preferred way to do it. And there's a link to the CertBot site. CertBot, of course, is a separate project by the EFF. So if we go to this page, it comes up and it says, okay, we're going to help you do this, but I need to know what software you're using and what kind of system you have. So for my demonstration, I'm going to be showing it with one of my servers. I'm going to be using the Nginx web server software. That's a very popular choice. Apache is also a very popular one, but you see they have a couple of other choices here. And then I can choose the system that I'm using, and I'm going to be using Ubuntu 16.04. So that's the one I have. You'll choose the one you're using, and then it'll come up and it'll say, okay, here's the instructions, right? It goes through and it just gives you all the steps that you need. Now, these instructions may change after the time that I've recorded this. And if they do, definitely go with what they tell you on the website. I'm recording it at this point in time. These are the current instructions as of today. But if there's a difference, go with their instructions. They'll modify them if they need updates. So the website that I'm going to do this to is a temporary website that I've set up. I've just called it SSL Test, and I registered the domain name ssltest.site. Now you have to have a domain to get a certificate. It's not enough to just have an IP address. You must register a site with a domain name because we have to attach our certificate to a domain. So I've registered ssltest.site and just put up a simple HTML page as a sample. I can log into that from my command line using SSH. I have a shortcut here that'll just let me log in as SSL tester. And you can see that I'm just in a home directory called Kevin. I'm going to change directories to my web directory. And let's take a look at what's in there. you'll see that I have something called SSL test site. And if I check again for SSL test site and see what's in that directory, you'll see there's just a simple file in there called index.html. And we see that over here in Chrome. So now I'm going to go to my Nginx directory, which for me is stored in etc Nginx. I'm just going to clear my screen. We'll do ls-la so we can see the list of what's in there. You'll see that there's that directory called sites available. If we look inside there, sites available, you'll see SSL test.site is one of the sites that's available to me. And I have it configured and turned on, and we know that because we can see it in the browser. So now I'm going to go to cat sites available SSL test site. And you'll see that I just have a very basic configuration file in there. Now, if you're using Nginx, yours is possibly very different than that. I've just put in the most basic thing that I could to sort of get things up and running. So now if we go back to this certbot page, we can follow the instructions that they have and install certbot. So I've already done these steps. I actually have already done them so that all of these first steps are done. I've installed all the apt-get repository updates and things that I need. So now, you come down here, once I've installed the software, it's just as simple as running this command right here. Sudo certbot space -- nginx. So I'm going to copy that line. We'll come back over here. I'll clear the screen and let's run it. So I'll type in sudo certbot space -nginx. Now for me, it already remembered that I had my sudo password entered. For you, it may pop up and ask you for a password, but then it runs the certbot program. So it says, all right, I'm going to be using Nginx. The installer is Nginx. So first I need an email address that we're going to use. So I'm going to put in my email address. So it starts a new secure connection to Let's Encrypt. Read the terms of service. Once we agree to them, we type an A. Would you be willing to share your email address with the EFF who helped develop certbot? You can say yes or no. It's up to you. I'm going to say no in my case. Now, which names would you like to activate it for? And we have a choice. Select the appropriate names, commas or spaces, or leave them blank. Let's do it just for the first one. So number 1. So it does the challenges. It checks to make sure. It's actually doing the domain verification right there. It did that by actually putting a digital file on the website so that it was visible to Let's Encrypt, and then it cleans it up and takes it away afterwards. So that proved that we're on the system that's making the request. It validated it that way. So do we want to redirect our HTTP traffic to HTTPS? It's going to do that for us. So we do want to redirect that. We want to make all requests that used to go to HTTP now go to HTTPS. So let's say let's redirect. And that's it. Congratulations. It tells you where the file has been saved. Notice that here. It's in etc let's encrypt live ssl.site fullchain.pem. PEM is just a format that it puts that in. And it tells us where our private key is. Now this is our private key we never want to share with anyone. It tells us when the certificate will expire. So we'll need to set up something that will renew this for us periodically. Right now it's only going to last for a few months. And that's the whole process. Now I'm just going to clear the screen and let's hit the up arrow a couple of times and let's take a look at that SSL test site, and you'll notice that it actually modified our config file for us. See that? So it has listen 443, that's the port that's used for secure connections, and it tells us where it finds that certificate file right here. SSL certificate is the directive. It tells us here where our private key is located, and it also did a redirect here. So anything that comes in just to SSL test.site gets redirected to HTTPS. So now let's switch back over here to SSL test and let's hit return. And look at that. It redirected me automatically to HTTPS. It's no longer possible to go to the insecure version of the site. We now know that we have everything set up and working. Now that's a demonstration using Linux Ubuntu and Nginx, but if you follow the instructions on the certbot site, it shouldn't matter which one of these platforms you use. You should be able to plug in anything here and it will walk you through the process. In the previous movie, we saw how easy it is to install a Let's Encrypt certificate using certbot. But that's not the only way to install it. If you want to install Let's Encrypt, and perhaps you don't have shell access so that you can't access the server to run those commands, or maybe you're not comfortable with the command line, or you tried it out and it didn't work, then you have another option, which is that if you have a hosting provider, you can contact them and ask them to set up a Let's Encrypt certificate for you. This has become a very common request, and most hosting providers can assist you. You'll just need to open a troubleshooting or tech support ticket with them and ask them to help you out. On the Let's Encrypt website, right after the instructions about how to use it with shell access, it says without shell access, and it says then you can contact your hosting provider, and they actually have a link here to a list of hosting providers that do really good support for Let's Encrypt. Now, this is probably not an exhaustive list, but it is a very long list. If we go down here, that has full support, there's a few for those, but then for regular support, look at this long list. It just keeps going down and down and down. All of these all support Let's Encrypt. Now, there are a few that say they don't have support, and hopefully that will change in the future. But for now, chances are your web host can help you get this set up. So just contact them and see if they can walk you through it. There is one other thing that they note here, which is that if you still don't have support from your provider, you can do something called manual mode. Now, this does require you to actually upload some files, and it's a much longer involved process, but it is possible. You can follow this link to manual mode, and then you can use CertBot, but by uploading some files yourself.